kind of powerful being in a room full of women who are here to learn from each other and inspire each other. It is really holy company to be in. I thank EWiT for doing what they're doing with absolutely no agenda but to bring us all together. A big round of applause. So before we go any further and I introduce myself, a lot of the folks that came before me today have set up some breadcrumbs for the topic that I'm going to go deeper into. So I remember in the first session, Sarah spoke about if you are working for a manager who doesn't recognize the best in you, your best bet is to leave and find someone who does. We're going to talk about how you can be that kind of manager who can see the best in other people. And then I was really impressed in this last session, we heard a lot about advocating for yourself, identifying your superpower, but I also think a lot of that onus is on the people that manage other people to articulate what our people's superpowers are and share them with them so they can feel seen, they can feel valued, and that's some of what we're going to talk about today as well. The genesis of all of this is I have had an 18-plus long career now. I worked for 7 years at Procter & Gamble at the beginning of my career. And then for the last 7 years, I have been at LinkedIn. And then for the few years in between, I did a couple of other things. But through my formative years at Procter, my managers made me who I am today. And I had some good ones, and I had some not so good ones. And then later in my career, I had some terrible ones, and then again, some really good ones. The statistics show, and I want to thank Yulia for bringing this to my attention yesterday. The statistics show that managers influence 70% of the employee experience. Does that feel alien or not resonating with anybody here? Your happiness and your unfulfillment at work are both dictated by the sort of person that you report up to. And then how much of our time do we spend at work in our lives? I'd say most conservatively, we spend 8 hours out of 24 hours every day at work, so that's 30% to be very conservative. So take those two stats together, 30% of your life and 70% of that experience is defined by the sort of person that's managing you. It just kind of brings into sharp focus the role of people managers in the everyday happiness of our employees. But over time, I have read so much literature about what it takes to be a great manager, and I simply cannot remember most of it. It is complicated, it's more than 3 to 4 bullet points at a time. And so my goal over the last year was to try and distill all of that wisdom that I had read about and to turn it into something really simple that people can remember. People love alliterations, I know I do. People also love remembering things that are either 3 or 4 bullets long, no longer. Our attention spans just aren't built for that. And that's the genesis of what I call the 4G recipe. It's literally 4 Gs that you need to remember if you want to be an outstanding people manager. And for those of you that are not a people manager in this room, think of this as the 4 Gs that you can hold your manager accountable for, or at least have the right to expect from your manager. If they're not able to meet the bare minimum on all of these, forget being the black belt master at all of these. That's your cue to leave and go find somebody else. And so with that, I'm going to quickly introduce myself. My name is Sudha, as you can see. So it's a great day for Sudhas, as you can imagine, because there was one right here just before me. And our last names are eerily similar too, because I think from the same part of India. So you might get our names mixed up, but to make things really easy for you, at the end of this presentation, I have a QR code, so you can scan my LinkedIn profile and connect with me on LinkedIn. And you can find the right Sudha from the other Sudha. So my name is Sudha Ranganathan. I grew up in India for most of my life. I spent 7 years of my early career in Singapore working for Procter & Gamble, one of the best companies to work for. I moved to the US in 2012. I've been here for about 10 years now. Started my career here with a vendor firm called Nielsen, moved to PayPal for a couple of years, and have had a long and really fulfilling run at LinkedIn for the last 7 years. What got me interested in this topic of people managers is not just my own experiences, but also the fact that I work on the talent business at LinkedIn. This is our suite of products that help our customers hire and develop great talent to the highest potential. And over the time that I've had all of these managers, I really got thinking about how do we distill what makes the best ones so good at what they do and what sets them apart from the ones that are not so great. And so that's my passion, that's what I'm here to talk about. And before I go any further, I do want to say thanks to the wind beneath my wings. So, we all have somebody who's our ally who's pushing us forward in life. So I have with here my friend Aarti Sivaraman, who's sitting at this table right here. Aarti is a really seasoned communications professional, and she's gone about today introducing herself as my chief of staff, which she undoubtedly is the chief of staff of my life. These earrings, this outfit, these shoes, she picked out all of them. She vetted my presentation. She told me I should include a QR code at the end so people can find me on LinkedIn easily. She helped me copyright the framework that I'm going to be talking about with you today. She's helped me through major life decisions. And I think that every woman deserves other women like this in their corner, and Aarti is the woman in my corner. So I wanted to start with that so it doesn't get lost. With that, let's go ahead and get started, just to respect the time that you're investing in this. What you can expect out of this conversation today is a workshop. So there's going to be a lot less of me talking at you. There's going to be me putting you into breakouts with each other, where you're forced to brainstorm and talk about a couple of things as this relates to your day-to-day work. Now remember, if you're a people manager, this will directly apply to what you want to bring into your work. And if you're not a people manager, there are still going to be concepts here in the workshop that you will learn a lot from and you will know to expect from your manager. So I'm going to move forward and talk about the 4Gs. That helps. Okay, great. So you don't have to say anything, but just think back to the worst managers you've had. Yeah, I know. It's funny now, it was tragic when it was happening to you. Most things are like that. They're really tragic in the moment, and then you can see the humor in them. Think back to what made them so awful to work for. So what did they do that made them just so hard to work for? And now think back to the impact it had on you. What did you feel like when you were reporting for this person? It's a large room, so I'm not going to have you scream words at me. The words I've often heard screamed at me when I ask this question and ask for answers: unsupportive, uncollaborative, takes credit for my work, doesn't make great priority calls, so I'm left overwhelmed and burnt out, and the list goes on. But now on to something happier. Think back to the best managers you've had. What did they do that made them so wonderful to work for? And how did that make you feel on a day-to-day basis? The answers I've had screamed back at me when I've asked this question, and the tonality is obviously very different. People are so happy and eager to share these. I've heard words like inspired, supported, seen, valued, boundaried, protected, advocated for, and so on and so forth. And so what we're basically going to do is codify all of that into a really simple framework, and then we're going to do some breakouts today to try and apply that framework to our day-to-day. So here are the 4 magical Gs that you've all been waiting for this whole day. The first G of the 4 Gs is what I call the glow. This is about bringing out the best in your people and bringing out the best in the work that they do. The second of the 4 Gs is what I call the grow. This is where you feel equipped, comfortable, and willing to keep your people accountable to their goals and to expand their potential by sometimes doing difficult things like providing constructive feedback, challenging them, putting them in uncomfortable positions, etc. The third of the 4 Gs is helping your people get things done. This includes knowing how to unblock the barriers that are in their way, knowing how to set effective boundaries so they can focus on a few things done really well. It includes knowing the difference between when to coach, when to teach, and when to get in the trenches and do things alongside your people. And the fourth one, for those of you that are Fleetwood Mac fans, I know this is very evocative of one of their amazing songs. You can go your own way. But this, I think, is the most unspoken, secret, special sauce of great managers, is that they're going to be willing to let you fly and move on to your next play when the time is right for you, not when the time is right for them. We'll talk more about each of these 4 Gs. But if there's anything for you to remember and walk away from today, it's the 4 Gs of great managers: helping your people glow, helping your people grow, helping your people get things done, and helping your people go their own way when the time is right for them. So we'll go into each of these, And just because we only have so much time today, 46 minutes left on the clock, we're only going to workshop 2 of these 4 today. But of course, depending on what is happening in your team and your organization and where you feel like there are opportunity areas, a workshop would be very different because we'd focus in then on those areas. All right, so let's start with the first G, the glow, bringing out the best in your people and your work. I see the three elements that are really critical to helping your teams glow. The first one, I think of this as the very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, is helping your people feel really safe. Think about the difference you felt when you were on a team where you could not only speak up and share your opinions without any fear of retribution, you could also express that you don't know something without fear of judgment. We call this learning psychological safety. And I think the black belt level of psychological safety is when you felt comfortable dissenting, not only with your peers, but also with someone more senior than you. Disagreeing is the most powerful form of contributing to innovation, which we spoke about earlier today. And yet it is extremely hard to disagree and make your voice heard if you feel like it is not going to be appreciated, and worse still, if you feel like you're going to be punished for it. And so the number one responsibility under GLOW is helping your people feel safe, creating psychological safety. How do you do this? When people have new ideas, you listen to those ideas. When people disagree with you and provide critical input that is going to make an idea better, you take the time to appreciate and thank them in front of everybody so others know that it feels safe to speak up as well. When people express vulnerability, you praise them for it, you share your own vulnerabilities, and you make it the sort of environment where mistakes are a way that you learn and grow, not a way that you blame and shame. So that's psychological safety, the very first of the three pillars of the GLOW. Next on Maslow's hierarchy is what I call showing care and support. Care and support at its very basic is the willingness and the ability to be interested in your people beyond the work that they're doing for you. This, of course, is boundaried by how much your people want to share with you. You can't force your people to tell you everything that's going on in their lives. But to the extent that they're willing to share things about their life with you, the very basic of care and support looks like acknowledging, nodding, listening, and creating the space where they can share that with you. The yellow belt version of showing care and support is remembering what they shared with you the next time that you're with them. So for example, I had one of my direct reports tell me that her husband's cousin was in a really terrible accident. She was nearly in tears as she was telling me this story. And I noticed that in our next one-on-one, she didn't say anything about it. And then in our next one-on-one, she didn't say anything about it. In these moments, what a great manager does is actually asks and brings up something that was really important to your people, because this is what tells them that you were listening, that you were paying attention, and you care damn well enough to remember what is going on with them and come back to it. So that's what I call black belt care and yellow belt care and support. Black belt care and support is going a step further to ask what they need and what you can do to accommodate whatever is going on in their life. So there is the listening and holding space, there is the remembering and coming back to it so they know you remember, and then there's the actually doing something about it and offering up something to make a tangible difference in their lives. So that's the second one here. And the third one, I think this sits at the very top of Maslow's hierarchy, where if you remember, the topmost level is called self-actualization. This is where superpowers come into play. If you see that your people do something really wonderful, like one of your people is really great at, I remember an example you used earlier, putting the team above yourself. This person's consistently willing to solve problems that are important to be solved, not because they're sexy and not because they align with this individual's passion area, but because they are right for the business. Does the person know that you see that they are good at this? Have you ever made their implicit superpower explicit to them? And if you haven't, how will they know that they are seen and that they're having an impact? So this pillar of GLOW, which is a very, very important pillar of GLOW that not many of us are good at doing because we're so wired to notice what is not right and to make it better, rather than to notice what is working and to call it out and give it a name. This is the superpower where you are able to turn your people's implicit superpowers into explicit language and share it with them on a steady, consistent basis. This is where you don't wait until the year-end appraisal to tell them what they've done well, but you do it real time. And finally, you don't just stop there. You don't just stop at identifying their skills and amplifying and calling out their skills, but you also find every opportunity to put them against projects and work that are aligned with those skills. So you're getting the best of these people against the best of the problems in the business. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to move into a breakout where we're going to apply the easiest of these to apply in a breakout like this. It's that third pillar, which is how do you think about somebody on your team, think about what they do really well, and if you had to go back and tell that person what their superpower is or what their special skill is, what are the words that you would use to do that? So here are some instructions before we go into that breakout. Just in the interest of time, instead of 20 minutes, we're going to make this 15 minutes. Look around the table around you. What I want you to do is get into groups of either 2 or 3, depending on how many people you have at the table. And so we'll get through each of these steps in sequence. So that'll be step number 1, is you'll identify who your group is going to be, 2 to 3 people at the most, so you have the time to take turns. And what you will do in each of those turns is any person goes first and they pick somebody, either a direct colleague or a person who reports up to them on their team. Think about what is something that they do really, really well and differently so from other people. Share it with your buddies in your little breakout group, and then use their help to figure out how you would turn that into explicit skills language so you can go back and get ready to share it with that person. And basically then you'll just take turns at the table doing that together. So person 1 goes first, gets ideas from the other 2. Person 2 goes next, gets ideas from the other 3, and it goes on like that. And about 15 minutes or so, I'll give you a heads up a few minutes earlier that we're about to wrap, just so everybody can get a turn to go through. And that's how we're going to do it. So step number 1, just form your breakout groups. So just identify the people or agree at your table if you're going to be groups of 2 or 3 or whatever. And once you're done with that, just put your hand up so I know that groups are being formed around the room. And we're going to wrap. As terrible as I feel about cutting short these amazing conversations, I'd love to ask the room to come back. If you have to continue your conversation later, thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you. The claps are just a way to get everybody's attention so we can stop our breakout and come back as a room. I would have asked you what that exercise was like, but because again, we didn't want people screaming their answers from all the way back in the room, we have a little poll that we set up so you can tell us about what were some key insights that came out of this. Like, what was the feeling? What do you learn? What do you want to do with it? So go ahead, pull out your phones, scan this little QR code. And for our tech folks in the back, as we get all of these results, we'd love for them to get displayed pretty soon. So scan the code and just tell us what is a key insight that you had coming out of this breakout. Anything goes, a word, a phrase, a sentence. It's not working. Okay, cool. You know, part of being a great manager is also learning how to roll with the punches. So we're going to stop scanning. And I'm going to see how we can do this. So I'd love to see maybe a hand or 2 in the room. And I'm just going to have you stand up and share with us what was something that came out of this. Like, what's an aha? Thank you, ma'am. I think there's a mic coming your way. Thank you.
I know, I'm really loud as well. So I was like, oh, Mike, yes. Okay, we're quiet. Hi. Okay, so aha for me is the person I chose is actually the least performative on my team. Because the high performance, you could come up with things really quick. But I needed something for him because we're doing goals on Friday. And he works well under me as his manager. But if he goes to any other manager, he doesn't do well. And so I need him to keep, whatever I'm teaching him needs to continue. Because I'm also about to leave him as well. So one of the things that this is my group, it's my awesome group, is having him talk to the other managers. I am the only female manager, and I need him to be able to work on any kind of manager, because as we all know, you more than likely will have a terrible manager in your life. And so he's not going to always have me to protect him. And that was also feedback that I got from them. I realized I protect my team a lot, but unfortunately, they're not always going to have me. So they need to learn how to work under all the different kinds of managers that are out there. And so that needs to be ingrained within them. So I think that was really good feedback of like, yeah, I need to teach them that, hey, you need to figure out who you are so that whoever you're working under, you continue to work at that same level.
Got it.
So that's what I got back.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. We have a hand all the way back in the room, back there. There's a lady in black, but most of us are wearing black as well, so that's not terribly helpful. What's an insight you had coming out of this appreciation exercise?
Hi, everyone. My name's Ku. I had the insight, so I chose my manager, who is a very inspiring, empowering manager, and I'm very grateful to have. But she doesn't really have the support from her managers that she gives to me. And so I was saying, I'm starting to feel that more because, she doesn't have that empowering space anymore. And I had some really amazing feedback from my group that I basically can, in a realization that I could step up a little bit more and actually help instead of necessarily trying, which we also talked about giving gratitude to her, but gratitude that she might not be getting from other people. But really what was exciting for me was to say, hey, like something I can actually do is ask her what I could take off her plate. Ask her how I can help her, even though she's the one that's supposed to be helping me. So that was really exciting and felt good because I feel like that can expand me as well.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Ko. Thank you. And thank you to everyone in the room for just rolling with the punches on this one. I'm going to keep going in the interest of time. And so what we're going to do is avoid scanning the next code too. We'll just do this around the room. I know there's more to say, but we only have 23 minutes. I want to respect how much time you all have going into lunch because my stomach is going to start making noises very soon. And I don't want you to have to hear that. Let's move on to the next G. So here's the thing about glow. It's a really feel-good thing. So it's much easier for us to do, and it's much easier for us as women to do a great job at making other people glow. This next one tends to be a little bit harder. So I want to ask you, how does it feel if I tell you you need to go share constructive feedback with somebody on your team? What are some of the feelings that come up for you on the inside? Just like examine them. Is it excitement and optimism? Or is it the opposite? Is it how are they going to feel about me? Are there going to be tears? Are they going to be let down? Are they going to be disappointed? So often when we think about constructive feedback and holding people accountable, there are some very challenging emotions that come up. And it can be especially hard for women because we've been deeply conditioned to survive by having ourselves be both respected and liked. And providing constructive feedback feels very much like the antithesis of how you get liked by people. So we're going to talk a little bit and decode what goes into grow. Like I said, at the very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy in the grow is what I call constructive feedback. And a really simple formula I have developed to provide constructive feedback without shaming, but with the intention to grow another person is to do two things. Number one, focus on the specific and observable behavior that this person has exhibited. Don't focus on the assumptions of their motivation or their circumstances. That is none of your business. Focus on what they did specifically or what they said specifically that was observable to other people. So that's step one. Step two, focus on the impact that that had either on their reputation, on their team's morale, or on the business around them. That's it. 2 steps to constructive feedback. Articulate the specific and observable behavior and articulate the impact it had on them or others around them. And our breakout will be about practicing constructive feedback in groups of 2, but we'll come to that in a minute. The next one is what I call productive stretch. One of my shadows to my superpowers, so one of my superpowers is I'm invested deeply in developing and supporting other people. A really dark shadow side to that superpower is I hate to see other people struggle. And I have the tendency to jump in prematurely and rescue them without letting them flail about a little bit so they can learn to develop their swimming muscles. How many of you, how much does that resonate with many of you? That's many hands in the air. And as much as we may see this as a virtue, which is that we're always here to have our team's backs, when our teams learn to fight and to swim in the deep end, just the right amount, just between that zone that we call the comfort zone and that outermost circle that we call the danger zone. Kenny Loggins, anyone? The circle in between is what we call the circle of productive discomfort or productive stretch. It's where you're being stretched just enough outside your comfort zone to be learning a new skill and building a new muscle. It hurts a little bit like when you do a plank for 5 seconds or 15 seconds. Yep. And it keeps the person just short of entering the danger zone where you ask them to do a plank for a minute when they've never done a plank in their life. And as a manager, having the discernment to know where your person is and helping them get to that yellow circle of productive stretch without keeping them in the green circle of their comfort zone or the red circle of the danger zone, that's where magic happens, because this is where people grow. And it's also having the restraint to go jump in there and help them out if you see that they're just even starting to show signs of struggle. So this is all about productive stretch. This is how we help our people grow, by giving them challenges that they can flail about in a little bit, and we resist the urge to go jump in and rescue them. And the third one under this, again, the panel before us spoke about this, career conversations. The most outstanding managers I've had have proactively initiated career conversations, which is basically, hey, what's your 6 to 12 month desire? What is your 3 to 5 year desire? And what is your aspiration for your career on the 10-year horizon? Now, not everybody's going to have clear and distinct answers to these, but career conversations are all about understanding your people's values and understanding both their existing and desired skills, so you can help them chart a career path that is right for them. So those are the 3 elements of helping your people grow. The first one is constructive feedback. The second one is productive stretch. Remember the circles somewhere between the comfort zone and the danger zone. And the third is the ability to initiate and have regular career conversations where you're helping your people chart their path, whether that continues to be on your team or not. And with that, we're going to jump into our very next breakout. For this one, we're going to take 10 minutes because we only have 17 left. In fact, I think we're going to do even shorter than that, 7 minutes. We're going to do groups of 2, if that's possible, because this is going to be kind of tight. And the breakout exercise here is each person is going to take a turn identifying a piece of constructive feedback that they want to offer somebody who's either a peer or on their team. And turn that, just practice with the other person, turning that into what is the specific observable behavior and what is the impact that it is having. And that's it. And each person will take a turn with this. So take 10 minutes, not 20. Sorry, I said 7 minutes. 7 minutes, not 20. It's a dramatic cut, but that's just how time flies. Each person takes a turn. So groups of 2, each person simply takes a turn articulating who's this person you want to provide feedback to, what is the feedback you want to provide, try and distill it into specific observable behavior and the impact it's having. Take turns, and I'll give you a warning at about the 5-minute mark. And we get started now. All right, we're going to be done with that soon as well. We're coming to the end of our time with the second breakout, and if I could have the tables here help me with that round of applause again, I would really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. I know so many of you are still excitedly discussing. Thank you for bringing your attention back. I mean, talk about advocating for yourself. I just asked you all to clap for me. It doesn't get any better than that. Although this was only an attention-garnering ploy, I would not hesitate to do it if I had to in other circumstances as well. I'm curious how that breakout was for you all. And this time, we're actually going to try the QR code because apparently it does work. So could I have someone try and let me know if this works? What a joyous occasion. All right. Could you go ahead and enter into this poll, because then we'll be able to hear the collective wisdom of the room. What is a big insight that you had coming out of this breakout on how to provide constructive feedback? Take your time plugging in a phrase, a sentence, whatever it is for you. And I also see some hands in the audience. Okay, so it's working for a few people and it's not working for everyone, kind of like systems in society, which is why we're all here. So what we're also going to do is do the mic thing. So for those of you that were able to enter into the poll, that's wonderful. And we will bring up the responses in just a minute. But for those of you who couldn't enter, anyone that wants to share a key insight with the room, blinding light. Okay, there you go. I'm coming to you this time, ma'am, and the mic is going to work its way all the way to you.
Thank you. So I'm Banu. I work with OCI in product management, and that means I collaborate broadly with multiple teams to make product decisions, product innovations. So this exercise just sparked my mind about how effective it could be if I could provide constructive feedback in the template that you shared across different groups that I interact with. The first thing that came to my mind is choose a person, and I immediately went for my engineering manager, who does a great job in managing team across the world. We have team in India, we have team in US across different time zones, we have team in Europe, and we have this manager sitting in Australia. And just imagine the time differences that he might have to handle to just even have a conversation with each of them. And he does it in today's world. He stretches. He knows everybody by the name, and he knows their background. He knows their personal situation. He's flexible enough to understand how to make it easy for them to complete the engineering task, how much ever humongous it is, helps them to break it down, and also being flexible in allowing them to travel to their home country, allow them to work at their convenience, be it for whatever personal reasons. And I've appreciated him on emails, group settings where we are just talking about it and I mention it, and I appreciate him taking that extra mile to go and learn about the team, because of which we deliver by quality.
So what was your key aha about the constructive feedback?
For me, I think I have been doing it in different forums, but not in a format that would encourage him overall. So I'm going to take a note now to emphasize all the aspects that he's been doing is being seen. And that is influencing how people are working, how their quality is being delivered. And I plan to do that across other teams that I collaborate with. So I would like to broaden it. I think that's the aha moment for me. Don't look at just the team that you're closely operating with, but your success is dependent on other teams who are fueling in, and it's important to share how constructive your feedback is to make sure that everybody are able to work in tandem. So that's my key takeaway.
Thank you, Banu. Thank you. If you could pass the mic there. I think I saw Judy's hand up. What was the key aha coming out of this constructive feedback exercise?
Yeah, I think we did something really, really fun because we had a role play. So my lovely partners asked me like, hey, do you want to play it by providing the constructive feedback? So I think my biggest takeaway is after sharing the specific behaviors and the specific impact, two new things I learned from my partner. One is really to ask the other person, does he also see an impact for his job, to identify if there's a shared accountability for this before brainstorming the solutions. I think that is really, really like aha moment for me. And the second piece I learned is, if the other person is really busy, like overwhelmed, then how to help him to understand the regular one-on-ones, like why this is so important. Maybe sharing a few bullet points about the agenda to help the person understand, what are the key things we're going to talk about. So those are my key takeaways.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I particularly loved what you said about once you share the feedback with the other person, give them the opportunity to tell you how they see the impact of that behavior, because now there's some shared accountability and there's some buy-in too, so you can start moving towards a solution. Really love that. Thank you. Constructive feedback is its own separate workshop, yet to be announced and yet to be scheduled for next year. But in the meantime, this was the few quick tidbits that I wanted to leave the room with. We also have results from the Mentimeter poll. I'm wondering if it's easy enough to pull those up in a slide. Tech team? Going once, going twice, going thrice. So there you go. Timely feedback is important. Oof. I'm not going to read through each of these, but I'm going to let everybody digest what's coming through. There's a lot here. What we'll do is also share these responses with everybody so you have access to them later. There's some really great ideas in here about the importance of specificity, about the importance of timeliness, because if you wait until the end of your appraisal to give somebody feedback, there is no better way to betray their trust than to wait for that long and sit on the feedback and steep and marinate in it until you're deeply resentful. And then what you're going to be doing in your feedback session is you're going to be expressing yourself, not providing the person with the tools to grow and get better. And there's a big difference between those two. So I'm going to move on to the next G, just in the interest of time again. If we can go back to the presentation. Thank you, folks. There you go. Before I go to the next G, one thing I wanted to call out is I often hear senior leaders talking about how during the pandemic, we leaned heavily into care and support for our teams, which is all about that glow. And about how now we need to lean out of that so we can lean into challenging our teams and holding them accountable. As if caring for people and challenging people sit on opposite ends of some sort of linear spectrum. What great leaders know how to do really effectively is to put these on a 2x2. They know how to balance both showing deep care for their teams and deep accountability and challenge for their teams. This is where you see traits of the empowering leader that sits in the top right over here, versus you could care a lot but not challenge someone, what Kim Scott calls ruinous empathy. You could challenge all the time but not care at all, which is basically jerk-like behavior. So the sweet spot is really where both care and challenge are high, and they don't need to be a trade-off versus each other. In fact, I'd argue that if you truly care for someone, then you are brave enough and you care enough to challenge them and help them become the best version of themselves, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you. So I want to leave you with that. Move on to the next G, get things done. Knowing when to coach, teach, and do. So at the very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of getting things done, to help your team get things done, the first step is to unblock barriers in their way and to set really effective boundaries around their work that anchors in the few priorities that are going to make an outsized contribution to the business. So your first job as a manager is identifying what are those priorities, setting clear boundaries so your people know how to work on those priorities, and unblocking any barriers that are in their way to executing against them. So that's the basic, that's number one. A really funny term I use to describe this aspect of a managerial job is the shit umbrella. I know, it's evocative, but it's meant to get that rise out of you. Because that's basically our job, right? As managers, we're meant to be the protective cover over our teams, so all of the incoming ad hoc requests can be kept off their backs, especially for our most junior people who don't know how to say no yet. For our most senior people, they need to learn how to be their own shit umbrella and come to you when things get really hard. So not the best choice of words, but hopefully a very evocative analogy to tell you what the role of a manager is. The second one, it's knowing the difference between when to coach, when to teach, and when to do. And often this corresponds to the seniority or the tenure of your people. And often it also boils down to you having the discernment on which skill to apply against which use case. Coaching is when you ask a lot of powerful questions to help the other person get to an answer by themselves, because you believe they have the resources and the skill sets to get there. They just needed to be prodded along with the right questions. Teaching is when you actually tell them how to do something. You walk them through the journey step by step. This applies to when people are a little bit more junior or they're new to a role. And then doing alongside your people is when you have to get in the trenches, when there's just not enough manpower, or you are the only one with the expertise to show your team how to do something. You can't sit in your ivory tower and basically say, go figure it out and come back to me when it's done. These are the moments you have to know to get in the trenches with them. But the magic and the real wisdom comes from having the discernment to know when you do coaching versus teaching versus doing. And the final pillar of getting things done is what I call rewarding invisible work. How often, this amazing group of women, how often have you encountered situations where you've been working on the non-sexy project, the non-shiny object for your company, which was nevertheless really important, but nobody could see or recognize why it was important? How often has that happened to you, that you've done the invisible work? How often have you contributed to team culture, organized and orchestrated bringing people together for connection in a really valuable way, and basically been relegated to the role of like an admin assistant, even though that's not your full-time job? Happens more often than we'd like. The role of managers is to be able to reward the invisible, non-shiny work, the work that happens in the back end to maintain code, to clean up bugs, to just put systems on maintain mode, because somebody's got to do that work so the shiny objects can succeed. So it's knowing how to recognize your people that are working on the not so shiny objects and to reward them for their invisible work so they can see why it's valuable and why it is still important to their career. With that, we'll move on to our last G, which is go your own way. The role of managers in helping their people go their own way, I think the absolute North Star here is what I call encouraging career mobility. So this is when you know that a person on your team has peaked in their skills in that particular role, and to use really simple words, they have outgrown that role. They can do it in their sleep. It no longer challenges them. It no longer stretches them. And now you have the hard choice to make of, do I hold on to this person because they're so good at what they do and losing them would be such a hit to me and my team? Or do I call out to them that they're starting to outgrow this role and maybe time for them to figure out what their next play is, maybe within this organization? It's having the detachment and the objectivity to do what is right for the other person over what is right for you. It's having the grace to fondly send them away when they choose their next play instead of resenting them forever. I have noticed that the people that I was able to encourage to move off my team are the ones that still stay in touch, and I know that when the right time comes, we will work together again. That is the magic of a great manager. If you love them, let them go. Don't love them, but you know what I mean. The second one is creating autonomy. This is as simple as letting people do their work their way, so long as they're clear about the outcomes to be delivered. So you don't obsess about how they get there. You only obsess about whether the results are what you need them to be. And what this requires from you as a manager is getting really crisp on what are the desired outcomes, providing color, context, connective tissue, what Brené Brown calls the 5 C's around the ideal outcome. So you and your person are super clear on what success looks like, and now you can just hang back and let them go do it their own way. So that's autonomy. And the third one is what I call support flexibility. We spoke about this a lot, especially for women who are having children, who are going through caregiving responsibilities in their lives and have to figure out different mechanisms and different hours in the day to get their work done. But of course, it doesn't just apply to women, it applies to men and women. Is as a manager, it is your job to figure out how to best support the flexibility that people need to get the job done effectively. Because when you let people do things at their own time, again, so long as the boundaries and the outcomes are really clear, they're going to shine because they're going to feel that sense of autonomy and support coming out of you. So going their own way, the most basic thing here is supporting flexibility. The yellow belt version is creating autonomy, and the black belt version of helping people go their own way is career mobility and actually encouraging it instead of holding your people back because you feel like they're too valuable to you to lose them to anybody else. And with that, here's a quick recap of the 4G manager framework. The 4Gs are about helping your people glow, helping your people grow, helping them get things done, and finally helping them go their own way when the time is right for them. And we had all of those little sub-buckets that we spoke about. The one thing I want you to do as you walk away from this session is just think about which of these do you really want to lean into as a leader because it applies more to your team and your context. And then how do you want to apply those skills more actively to your job? I'm hoping the fact that there are 4 alliterative Gs and it's a really simple framework helps you keep this in mind and remember it instead of having to distill really complex theories out there on what makes for great people managers. And with that, that is the QR code that I really do hope works. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Could I get like a quick, is that working? Yay, I got a thumbs up from the front of the room. I think that one works. Thank you, thank you. My friend Aarti is not in the room anymore, but this was her nifty trick to help me connect with everybody that's in the room. I would love to hear your feedback on what resonated about this session, what you plan to go back and apply in your own work, and what I can do better when I do this session the next time in my life. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and for the gift of your time, everybody. Thank you.